Good afternoon, and thank you for joining Opportunity Michigan's first online event of the year. My name is Cami Pendle, and I'm the Senior Director of Strategy at the Mackinac Center for Public Policy. The Mackinac Center is a nonprofit research and educational institute that advances principles of free markets and limited government. We've been established since 1987 and are headquartered in Midland and also have a satellite office in Lansing. I assist in overseeing the Mackinac Center's Opportunity Michigan initiative, which helps to equip individuals from all walks of life with the tools and resources they need to impact policy decisions that are being made in Lansing and in their local communities. We do this by hosting online events, such as our session here today, and we also provide our members with information through monthly emails, timely updates, and other special events. This afternoon, we are going to be discussing how to turn policy knowledge into policy action by participating in the state legislative process. This topic is especially timely since the new Michigan legislature convened just last month and is at the beginning stages of its legislative work. To provide us with more insight and to give us actionable steps that we can take to participate in the legislative process, I'm happy to introduce Adam Stacy, the Mackinac Center's Director of Legislative Affairs. Prior to joining the Mackinac Center, Adam worked in the state legislature for over 25 years. He worked as legislative staff in both the House and Senate, as well as serving in the House Policy Office and in the House and Senate's Caucus Services divisions. Regarding his educational background, Adam received his bachelor's degree in political science from Michigan State University and earned a master's degree in public administration from Western Michigan University. As you can tell from his background and professional experience, he'll have a lot of tips to share with us today. Now, before I turn the Zoom controls over to Adam, I just want to mention that we will have a Q&A session following his presentation. You'll be able to submit questions through the chat function by sending them directly to the host, Mackinac Center for Public Policy. And finally, we are also recording this session and we'll post it on our YouTube channel for later viewing. With that, welcome, Adam. The floor is yours.
Oh, thank you. I will share my screen right now and get our presentation going. So obviously, as Cami indicated, this is about trying to find a way to participate in the state legislative process as meaningfully as possible. So just a quick overview. We're going to go over how to identify your lawmaker, what the legislative process in Lansing and how it really works. We're going to provide some tips about how to earn the attention of a lawmaker, as well as the leverage points that lawmakers use to make decisions. And finally, we're going to do a walkthrough on MichiganVotes.com, which is a resource made available by the Mackinac Center for allowing people to track legislation. So who is your legislator? Well, everyone has two legislators represented in Lansing. You have a senator and you have a member of the State House of Representatives. Now, how to find your state representative? It's fairly easy. You can go to this website here, which is house.mi.gov. You click on where it says members and you put in your street address and it'll tell you who is representing your community in the State House of Representatives. Conversely, if you go to senate.mi.gov, you will then identify your senator by your address who is representing you. We did have a redistricting election not too far away. So if you haven't been plugged into the legislative process in a couple of years, there may be different individuals representing you in Lansing. So it's always good at the beginning of a term just to check and make sure who is your representative and senator. So the legislative process, just as a basic guide, your state legislative members of the House of Representatives serve 2-year terms, just like the members of the U.S. Congress who represent you there. Your state senators serve 4-year terms. And the federal level, the U.S. senator is a 6-year term. So in Michigan, here in state government, your representative is a 2-year term. He represents roughly 90,000 people. Your senator covers about 3 times that size and serves a 4-year term. And to get something done in Lansing, the expression has always been you need 56, 20, and 1. And what do we mean by that? Is you need a majority in the House of Representatives, which is 56 members supporting your idea. You need 20 senators, which is a majority in the Senate, and you need the governor to sign off on your legislation. Now, if you notice, there's an asterisk by the 20 in the state Senate. Currently, there is a vacancy in the state Senate. So instead of a full body of 38 senators, there are currently 37. So a majority is 19. So at this point in time, until the governor calls a special election to fill the vacancy roughly in the Midland area where the incumbent state senator was elected to the U.S. Congress, it only needs 19 votes for the foreseeable future until that vacancy is filled. So the legislative process, as Cammie mentioned, we are just beginning the next 2-year term. The entire legislative process resets every 2 years. It doesn't matter if your state senator was elected, 2 years ago or 4 years ago. All legislation has to be introduced after a 2-year period. All the House committees also, there's a lot of usually change in membership. So the people who might have served on a particular committee that you're tracking, they might have turned over. They might have turned over 100%, or 3 or 4 of the members may have turned over. So at the beginning of a legislative term, which is the January, February, right now we're in an odd number year. It's always good to do a quick check and see what are the committee assignments and who is chairing those committees. Term limits. Michigan voters, we did adopt a change to our term limit policy. Our original term limit policy was passed in 1992, and it used to be that a state representative was limited to 3 2-year terms, so a total of 6 years in the House of Representatives, and 2 4-year terms in the Senate for a total of 8 years. You had the 6 in the House and the 8 in the Senate, and an individual could have a maximum combined service in the legislature of 14 years. We have now changed that. Now a lawmaker is limited to 12 total years of service. That could be in any combination between the House and the Senate. So a member now in the House, instead of being termed out after only 6 years, can stay there for their entire career of 12 years. Or maybe after 8 years, they decide to move up to the Senate where they can only serve 1 4-year term. Just a piece of information, make sure you're aware of that. Now, the legislative process, like anything, there are certain cycles and certain ways of doing business. Right now, we're in the very first few months. This is when new bills are being introduced. Like I said, every bill that was not signed into law or taken action on by the end of December is now no more. It has to be reset. There may be no change to the bill. The bill may have advanced through the House, and it may have almost gotten through the Senate, or it may have gotten through the Senate, and then it was vetoed by the governor, or it was pocket vetoed, and that's a term we'll use later. It just wasn't signed into law. That bill may not have changed. They may have reintroduced it, but it still has to be reintroduced at the beginning of the year. Right now, the committees are going through their organizational meetings. They will start to have hearings if they haven't had some already on just some informational topics. Once we get through into next month and through the rest of the spring, the number of bills starts to populate. Now we've gotten dozens and hundreds of bills being put into the system, being assigned to committee, and starting to have hearings in the committees and possibly moved out of the committees and taken votes in either the House or the Senate. In July and August, there's typically a reduced workload. There's usually a summer break. That means you usually will have a couple of session days in July and August. There may not be a full attendance. There may be. It all depends on the budget, and we'll get to the budget in a few minutes about whether the budget's been wrapped up or not. In September and December, there's more of an active legislative cycle while we're in. Session is usually held Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday of every week. There are committees being held on Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday of every week, and that continues through December. Next year, it's still the same legislative term, even though we're in a new calendar year. So the committees continue to have hearings, move legislation. House and Senate have already taken a lot of votes. Now those bills that passed one chamber are in the other chamber, and they're being acted on and being sent to the governor's desk. There's another reduced work period in this July and August of next year. September and October, there will be committee meetings. There will be legislative activity. It's not as frantic as it is right now in the next 3 or 4 months. It's usually more of a focus on in-district work period. And then we have November and December. And if you see here my little caricature, this is the term we call lame duck. That is the session of the legislature that takes place after there's an election and before the end of the year. So lawmakers, some lawmakers have been reelected, some lawmakers have not been reelected. Some lawmakers have been termed out. So there will be a change in the legislative status. There may be a change in the majority status between the two major political parties. But this is a frenetic period of legislative activity here before the end of the year, and sometimes 40 or even 50% of all the laws that are passed in a given 2-year period take place in this very compressed, restricted 3 to 4 week period of time. So that is the normal flow of the legislative process. The budget side also has its own cycle. Last month, we had a revenue estimating conference. That's when the heads of the fiscal agencies and the most noted economists in the state to get together, and they project what the revenues of the state are going to look like for the next year. Now, remember, the fiscal year for the state starts on October 1st. So they are projecting what are the collections going to be starting October 1st of this year through September 30th of next year. Earlier this month, the governor presented her executive budget recommendation, what she would like to see the budget look like. Then the House and Senate both have their own appropriations committees. These are the budget committees for the chamber, and each of those committees has various subcommittees that focus on particular aspects of the budget, whether it's transportation, the courts, the health and human services area. They hold hearings all through the spring, and then they come up with their own spending plans. And so the House and the Senate has its own spending plan that is laid out. In May, we have a second revenue estimating conference. We fine-tune the budget numbers that we are projecting starting in October. We agree on what we come together and agree on what we think the revenue picture is going to look like. And they typically adopt a budget by the end of the month. And this is because schools have a fiscal year that begins July 1st. And there's a lot of pressure on lawmakers to have at least the school aid budget portion done by July 1st, because schools can make necessary decisions on hiring and what the resources are for when schools start. But the actual fiscal year begins October 1st. So if there are parts of the budget that aren't quite completed yet, they still have until the end of September to get that done. So when we're talking about issues that you want to petition your lawmaker about, who should you contact? Remember, you have one state senator, one state representative. You may not necessarily want to go to your state representative. If it's an issue that particularly touches your local community, your state senator may only live a couple streets away. So maybe it's your state senator you want to reach out to, even though your state representative has a smaller district. They may be at the other end of the county and may not be as responsive to the issue you're talking about. Is your issue federal, state, or local? This is a very basic question, and it's not super obvious. And don't worry, no one is going to hold it against you. One of the most common calls we get in a state legislative office is someone asking, I have an issue and I have a problem. Who do you think I should talk to? And those staff in those offices are perfectly willing to answer your question and direct you to who has the authority over your issue. It could be a local road issue. So they will say, well, you need to talk to your county road commission. It could be an issue with the responsiveness of your fire department. Well, you need to talk to your village or your township board. It might be an issue that touches on the federal issue, and they will happily redirect you to who your congressperson is that represents your community. And if it's a state issue, that's when they will take down your information. And if it's something the lawmaker can handle, or if it's a state agency, they can help direct you to a person in that state department who can assist you with. But don't feel free to call your state representative or state senator if you're not sure what your issue is, and they will happily tell you who has jurisdiction. So when you talk about who you should contact, you should always start out with reaching out to your own state lawmaker. But sometimes if it's a very esoteric issue, let's say you're a person who operates in the funeral home business, and you have a particular piece of legislation that you want to address for cemeteries or how funeral homes are operated. And lo and behold, out of the 148 lawmakers in Lansing, there might be 1 or 2 lawmakers who in the past were or currently are people who own a funeral home. That's perfectly legitimate for you to reach out to that person if you have that kind of nexus of information for that person who can assist you with. Another topic is the committee chair. If there's each of the bodies, the state Senate, state House, has various committees which hone on and focus on different topics of legislative activity. And the committee chair has a great deal of influence about what bills are going to be brought up for a hearing and what topics they're going to address if they want to do an informational hearing on a topic. So committee chair is also a person you may want to reach out to. They may want to re-refer you back to your own individual state lawmaker, so you may need a recommendation from your state lawmaker to continue to have that conversation. So when we talk about lawmakers, who do lawmakers respond to? Clearly, number one, are you their constituent? If you call up and you're their constituent, you will get a response, whether it's an email response, a phone response, but that staff will respond to you because you are their clients. You are the people they are serving. Do you have a particular expertise, or does a lawmaker have a particular expertise? Lawmakers cannot be experts on everything. That's why they are assigned to 3 or 4 different committees where they try to hone in and focus. Let's say a lawmaker serves on the Health Policy Committee and he serves on the Technology Committee. So he is trying to focus his attention on those areas that need addressing in state law. You may have a topic that doesn't touch on something in his committee area, or you may have a particular expertise that she may be willing to tap into. Is this a lawmaker that other lawmakers listen to? Once again, lawmakers cannot be experts on every subject. A lawmaker will take literally thousands of votes over the course of their career, and they're relying on policy staff, their own staff, and mostly importantly, their peers, the other lawmakers, to guide them on how to make their voting decision. And some lawmakers have a great deal of expertise in a certain area. Using that example of the funeral director, if there was an issue dealing with the regulation of funeral homes, it would be natural for your lawmaker to go and talk to the individual and get a perspective on what this legislation will do to people in that industry. And once again, lawmakers will always respond if you communicate in a respectful manner, especially to their staff. Always remember some of these jobs that staff have are very difficult. Depending on what the topic of the day is, particularly what is being debated in Lansing, they may get hundreds, they may get thousands of emails, they may get dozens of phone calls coming in. So just always assume with a little bit of grace, that, people will be attentive and respond to your needs, even if it doesn't sound like they're listening to you at the moment. What do lawmakers respond to? Are you only pitching this issue? Is there anyone else that's interested in this issue, or do you represent a group? There's always strength and power in numbers. If it's some kind of an issue where you need some state revenue assistance to help fix a local road, maybe that connects to a park or something, instead of simply calling your lawmaker and asking about that, maybe you say that you're a representative of your neighborhood association. Show that it's not just you who cares about this issue, it's dozens of different homeowners in your area that care. Or if you're a part of some kind of association that deals with this issue. What if you want to deal with the reimbursement rates of court transcribers? If you're a part of their organization, you can go in and say that I am the secretary of the Michigan Association of Court Transcribers. So we have come together and have this issue we want to address. Credibility. Once again, are you a member of an organization that's focused on this issue? Do you have a particular expertise? Is this something that's in your field of professional study? Is this something that you're had a career doing in your job? Data points, survey research, always helpful to reinforce your point. Comparison to their peers. Nobody wants to hear that Michigan is the only state in the union that doesn't do X. That always makes people feel they're a little behind the times. So comparison to what other states are doing is always good. And how to contact your lawmaker? Well, the basic email is always a good way to start. It's always easier to, especially if it's a complicated issue, to lay it out in a paragraph or two. You might need to attach charts. There may be a picture of something you need to attach to show your point of view. Email is always a good starting point to have a conversation. Phone call, like I said, sometimes the lines can be jammed. So if you If you don't reach your state legislative office right away, don't worry, they will reach out and get back to you at a later time. But it's also if you just have a quick question. If you want to say, there's an issue coming up on regulating this certain industry. How does my lawmaker feel on this issue? Sometimes staff are perfectly willing to, talk with you for 30 seconds, 45 seconds and say, yeah, I talked to my boss the other day. She said she's going to be a yes on this. That way that information is passed along to you very efficiently, very quickly. One-on-one conversations, always a good opportunity to sit down and talk with your lawmaker directly. If you want to reach them in Lansing, it may be more difficult because they're only in Lansing typically, depending on their location. If they live closer to Lansing, they may show up on a Monday or Friday, but typically the professional business days in Lansing are Tuesday through Thursday. And you are not just competing with other people on their schedule for a meeting, you're competing with committee meetings they have to meet on the day. You're competing with a session that meets sometimes 2, 3, 5, 6 hours. So if you have an opportunity to meet the individual in the district, and generally most lawmakers that make themselves available in district. During COVID, they were doing a lot of Zoom meetings. I think some of them have come back to in-district meetings, but generally once a month, they will announce on their social media posts or on their website where they're meeting constituents. An impromptu meeting. Once again, these lawmakers, they're your neighbors, they're in your community, they're shopping, they're going to baseball games and football games. Sometimes you might be able to meet them in an impromptu manner. Lawmakers generally will talk with you for a few minutes. They may be focused on other things. If you catch them in the grocery store, you may not be able to grab their attention more than for a few seconds, but if you're going to a village council meeting or township board meeting and the lawmaker is there to give a legislative update to the board, you absolutely would have an opportunity to meet them before or after the meeting and talk about your issue. So when you're preparing to meet your lawmaker, here's a couple of steps to think about. Do your research beforehand. Make sure you know your issue cold so that you can be very eloquent, straightforward, and efficient, and trying to communicate what your desired policy outcome is to them. Dress appropriately. Business casual, formal business attire. It's never wrong to dress a little bit more than you think. Putting on a tie on if you're not sure about it, putting a tie on. Wearing a sports coat. If you're meeting in Lansing, you do want to be dressing business appropriately. If you're meeting a lawmaker in the district at a district office, it's okay to dress more casual, and they will probably be dressed down a little more casual as well. Have your contact info handy. This doesn't mean you necessarily have to have business cards printed out to make sure the lawmaker can reach you. But if you are trying to discuss with them a certain topic, it's always good to have some materials prepared. And on those materials that they can take notes, that they can reference, that they can especially pass on to their staff, because they may be having 3 or 4 conversations in this meeting, and they want to make sure they can give this information to their staff to do any follow-up work. Make sure your contact information is clearly identified so that people can reach out to you. And like I said, it's always good to leave them some written materials for reference, just so they can have a permanency to that meeting and that they can have something they can reference to and follow up and discuss if your future contact. And always, always thank them for their time. These are very busy individuals. Feel appreciated that they've taken the time to meet with you, even if you're not getting the sense that they're agreeing with you right now or getting or have as much passion about the subject as you. There's always time for follow-up conversations to work on that in the future. So when we're talking about lobbying, here's an example. This right here on the screen is the state flag of Michigan. Some see this as pretty, others see this as pretty generic and looks just like another dozen flags that are out there. So this is an example of what you would do as advocacy. What would be your first goal? You say, I want to redesign Michigan's flag. And this isn't quite off the cuff. There's actually been 2 states that have redesigned their flag in the last few years. You can look it up. It's Utah and Minnesota, because the standard flag for many was taking your seal and putting on a navy blue field, which is why you're seeing it replicated quite often. So let's say that you want to have a commission to redesign Michigan's flag, and you go to your lawmaker, and your lawmaker listens to you, but they're not really interested in introducing that legislation. So next, maybe you would look and see, well, what committee would take advantage of this? And maybe I can talk to the committee chair and see if this is a matter they want to look up. Unfortunately, but fortunately for the rest of us, our bureaucracy is not so intolerable that we have a dedicated committee to redesigning our state flag. But there may be other lawmakers who have expressed an interest in this. If they haven't introduced the legislation now, maybe they've introduced it in the past. And I'll show you how to look that up in a few minutes. Or they may have spoken about this. You could do a quick Google search and see if anyone is talking about that. And when you're talking and you're doing that Google search, maybe you've identified another group or organization that cares about this issue, and you can get involved in that organization and help them. Could be the League of Women Voters. They take on issues other than voting security. Maybe they want to redesign the flag, but there may be other groups out there so that once again, it's not just you as a lone voice in the wilderness. There may be strength in numbers. So when we're talking about the tools of the trade, what are we going to do in terms of advancing our issue? There's a lot of, right now, there's a lot of information out there. There's a lot of apps out there to let people, especially busy people who may not have the time from 8 to 5 to pay attention to legislative issue, to do it in the morning or do it in the evening to figure out what's going on. We've already identified those two websites, the House and the Senate website. And we also have another website called legislature.mi.gov. And this is what that homepage looks like. And you will see there will be links to the Michigan Senate and House. There will be also links to see the video feeds, not just the live feeds of when session is taking place, but you will be able to look at the archives of when committees have met and watch the testimony before those committees. Another great valuable resource that a lot of people don't realize, Senate and House fiscal agencies, tremendous amount of data on here. Not just on the economics, but they're also a repository for a lot of information that touches various state agencies. If you look over on this side in the bottom left screen, this is when you can look up and do searches on bills and bill content, look at the resolutions that have been introduced, see who the lawmakers are, check out what's being done executively. You can check out the latest executive orders. And MCL search, if you want to identify, I wonder if state law touches on this topic. You could do some very basic broad searches on the Michigan compiled law to find out what is existing in state law before you decide what it is as state law I might want to change. But I want to take a few moments here to talk about MichiganVotes.com. This is a resource Mackinac Center has been actively involved in for a number of different decades to pretty much allow a grassroots access to what is happening in Lansing. So I'm going to quickly stop my share here for a quick moment. And I'm going to reshare so we can go directly to the website and I can show you that. So this is our MichiganVotes.com. Whoops, no, I'm not on MichiganVotes.com. Hold on. I will reshare that screen. And we will reshare that screen. Hold on a minute. Here it is. There it is. Okay. So we should be up and running right now. So MichiganVotes.com. Let's say, we'll give you a brief overview of what's going on. A lot of different areas, legislators, bills, votes, laws. So let's talk about a bill. Let's talk about Senate Bill 8, and we'll just put in Senate Bill 8 right here. If you were following the news recently, there was a great debate in Lansing about how to adjust the law, which was going to affect tip wage workers mostly, but it was also raising the minimum wage. So Senate Bill 8 was, there was a compromise reached. Tipped workers, we preserved the tipped work wage. We accelerated the minimum wage increase to $15 in the next couple of years. And you can see here, this shows the Mackinac Center analysis of what the bill is. If you went to another government website, what you would see is right here, labor, hours and wages, minimum hourly wage rate modified. What we do at Mackinac is we take that pretty much very generic language, and we try to put in the vernacular to show you what this is actually doing. We give you a little context. We talk about how this is necessary to make a change to a Supreme Court ruling. And down here, you can follow how the legislation moved about. It was introduced by Senator Kevin Hertel. It went through the committee process. It was voted on out of the Senate. It was received in the House. It was amended, debated on, approved. It was concurred with, it was sent to the governor, and it was signed into law. And as you can see up here, it is Public Act 1. Another bill you could look up would be House Bill 4054. This would be to change the state symbol to the monarch butterfly as the official state butterfly. Apparently, we don't have an official state butterfly. We have an official state bird, but not a butterfly. This is not an unusual kind of bill. As I said, there are literally thousands of bills introduced every session. Some of these bills are done as an educational effort, usually by some kind of elementary classroom, to say, we would like to see the process of how to do a bill, and we're going to do something about making a state fossil, which is the mastodon, or a state soil series. This is not unusual. What you will see down here is an AI analysis. This is simply taking this very generic language, which is state butterfly, and putting it into a little more English language proper. The bill proposes to designate the monarch butterfly as the official state butterfly. So when you see AI analysis, that's all it's doing. It's simply taking this very legalese and just making it into something a little more easy to read. Now, if we want to go back to that last bill by Senator Kurtel, let's say we want to find out more about the senator who introduced the bill. We click on it. This is Senator Hertel. It will tell us where he is in his legislative career. So he's currently serving in the Senate. He served in the House before that. Gives you contact information if you need to reach out to him. Gives you his entire voting history, what bills he sponsored, what amendments he's offered, how many votes he's taken. You can also see by votes here, you can just adjust for this session. Let's say we're only looking at this session. So he has taken 8 votes, including that Senate Bill 8 that was made into law, Public Act 1. If you want to just let's look at all sessions. So let's look at all the votes he's taken, 4,000. And let's look at only the votes he's taken on agriculture. So then we can hone that down and find out just the bills he's taken on agriculture. We can find out what bills he sponsored on agriculture, what bills he sponsored on commerce over the years. And we could do that by every session or just a particular session. And then you can also find out what laws have been passed in this session that are related to each topic. So tremendous amount of information on here. We always encourage you to go on and use this as a tool. If you want to find out who your state lawmakers are, you can also find that out directly here. Just like for those House and Senate official pages, you can also find out who your lawmakers are, and you can look them up by street address, or you can just highlight on the map and see who's representing which areas of the state. And finally, like I said, you can follow on certain topics. If there's a certain topic you're interested in, like local government or taxes, you can pull up the bills and taxes that have just been introduced for this session. So there's 31. You can look at the bills and taxes that were just introduced in the last session. So a lot of good search tools that are out here. So I would just say in conclusion, just develop a plan and work the plan. And eventually, with persistence and a little bit of patience, things will work. Things can be accomplished in the legislative system.
Great. Thank you, Adam, for your presentation and advice for how to effectively participate in the legislative process. We are now going to open up our Q&A session so our Opportunity Michigan members can start to submit the questions they have for you. And just a reminder, you can submit those questions through the chat function and direct them to the host, Mackinac Center for Public Policy. So while all of that is starting to take place, I'll kick the session off with this first question. So Adam, you shared a lot of great recommendations for actions we can take to engage in the legislative process. Let's flip the coin. What are some things that people should not do when engaging in the legislative process?
Well, like I said, don't be hostile. Always be diplomatic, be polite, thank people for their time. Like I said, things can get crazy downtown. So don't read too much into it. If you're interacting with a lawmaker, if you're interacting with a staff member, and you're not feeling like they're paying sufficient attention or they're caring as much about your issue as you think they should, just don't assume a negative response. There's just a lot of activity going on. Their schedules maybe have gotten blown up a few minutes earlier. They may be trying to deal with 14 things at the same time, but just be polite. Make sure that they have your contact information. And if you need to follow up in the future, you'll attract more bees with honey.
Great. And here's another question for you. You mentioned legislators hold coffee hours in the district or some type of in-district meetings. If that information isn't posted on a legislator's website, what's the best way for someone to find out when those types of meetings are taking place?
Yeah, if it's not on the member's website, it might be on their social media page, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. If it's not available there, always feel free to call them or email them. An email is probably an easy one that they can respond to pretty quickly and let you know of when the next in-district hours are. And members, especially ones of larger districts, tend to rotate their in-district hours. So if there's one coming up next month, but it's on the other side of the county or even a different county, they may be moving back closer to your area in the next couple months.
So, Adam, we have another question here from a member regarding the legislative committee process. And he states that in the past, when he has noticed a bill that has been posted for a committee hearing, he has wanted to share his opinion on it or at least somehow register his concerns for the record. So he's wondering, how can a person go about testifying in committee? What if a person can't make it to Lansing? And can they submit written comments or testify remotely?
Yeah, excellent question. Post-COVID is actually very user-friendly now to Zoom into a committee meeting, especially if you can't show up in person or if it's a very long distance away that you're trying to reach out to. If you'd like to participate in a committee, if you'd like to offer testimony, there's no guarantees. It is the discretion of the committee chair who will testify before a matter. And don't take it personally if you're not chosen to testify. There is a time schedule that they have to keep. So they may not be prejudiced against what you're trying to say. It may be simply because they've already got other people lined up who may be offering a very similar opinion. But you are absolutely in your rights to request the ability to make contact. You should be able to reach out to the committee chair is always a good way of doing that. You can also reach out directly to the committee clerk and indicate that you have a desire to testify, and that committee clerk will also pass that on to the committee chair. And if you'd offer written testimony, this is a little secret that people don't realize in Lansing. They will publish it. There is no limitation. There's no shortage of paper here. If you're sending them a Word document, an Excel sheet, a PDF document, they will attach it as testimony for the committee, either in addition to your own verbal testimony at the meeting or in replace of it. If you simply say, I don't wish to testify, but I would like to submit this written document expressing my concerns. It will be posted, and you can check back in a few days, and it will be a part of the committee record.
So we have another question, and this is from someone who is a little concerned about engaging with their legislator because he is wondering if he might have to register as a lobbyist. What guidance would you like to share with him?
This is a grassroots effort, the decision about registering as a lobbyist is not an immediate concern for you. The Secretary of State is really concerned about the levels of funding that are attached to a lobbying effort. So if you are simply producing some materials, you're printing off some materials, or maybe you're going to get something more professionally done to make a nice formal presentation in writing, until you're hitting certain limits, if it's an individual lawmaker you have been having meetings with and advocating on, unless you're hitting limits of like $500 per the lawmaker, or if it's a particular issue and you're hitting limits of about $2,000 to talk to multiple lawmakers, you're not really hitting any thresholds that the Secretary of State has to be concerned with. But like I said, for any kind of grassroots lobbying, if you're just it's okay to go ahead and present materials and do things like that. But if you're also working with a group and that group is starting to reimburse you for mileage and you're working around the state and you're starting to grab hundreds of dollars in mileage reimbursement, that's when you probably need to reach out and start investigating whether you need to register as a lobbyist with the Secretary of State.
So we got another question, and this person is asking, do you think that form emails from organizations are worth sending to legislators? Should we expect responses to form emails, or is it really just a way to lodge your support or opposition?
Good question. There are advantages and disadvantages of form emails. The advantage is if you're in a tight time crunch and you want to make sure that your base is activated and making sure that the lawmakers understand that this is an issue you care passionately about, it is very easy to just send to your membership, hey, take this email, send it along. That's fine. What you will understand is you will not get a personalized response if the form email is starting to be replicated hundreds or thousands of times. These legislative offices have some sophisticated computer software to catalog all these different constituent traffic through email that's coming through. And you will be put into a filter, and there will be a planned form that will be sent on in response to that form email. And an email written in your own words is always better because it's not going to catch those filters, and those staff are going to at least have to scan over and look over it, identify the subject area, and try to find a response back to it. Uh, Putting in your own words is not terribly difficult. If you're asking your members, it's like you can give them some subject material. Just say, we need you to reframe this in some fashion or way. But if you're simply in a time crunch and you just want to make sure that there's a deluge of communication to show that there is a lot of people who care passionately about the subject, then form emails can work. But I will also indicate this: the form email has to be from your district. A legislative office may get hit with thousands of emails, but they will only pay attention to the dozen or so that are their own constituents. They will re-refer any of those form emails to the person who is that you represent. And a lot of these form emails are set up so where it says Dan from Ada or Adam from Brooklyn. So it'll have it'll have a town or an address where they're from. So the office will know immediately this is not our constituent. We are re-referring this email to where it properly needs to go.
So we have another question regarding lobbying. And this individual would like to know if you can share some of the more technical aspects or definitions for what a lobbyist is.
Well, it's a good question because I'm still learning that myself. Because I am actually a registered lobbyist, which I'm still getting my head around because I really don't think of myself as a registered lobbyist. And there's a grassroots kind of understanding of what a lobbyist is. And some people think a lobbyist is someone who wears a $2,000 suit and wines and dines and takes lawmakers out to fancy dinners. Most of the lobbyists are pretty much in the mold that I'm in, which is we have an issue or a policy initiative we're trying to promote, and we're doing it pretty much through the legwork of persuasion. We are trying to meet with people and we are trying to just show them the facts, show them the logic of our position, show that it makes fiscal sense, it makes common sense. And we are trying to get them to understand that issue as much as possible so that they can internalize and understand and make their own decision concurrently that, yes, this is an issue that matters to my district and is good state public policy. In terms of the technical aspects, like I said, uh, lobbying is pretty much just advocacy. It's meeting your lawmaker, whether you're meeting them in the district, you're meeting them at the grocery store, the baseball stadium, or in a formal setting in their office. It's just taking whatever time you have with them. And, like I said, lawmakers are having to deal with issues across the entire state. So, you're just having a very short window of time. So try to be efficient, in order to be effective and say, I know there's a lot on your plate. I know you don't have a lot of time. I just want to give you these 3 points. So when you consider voting on this topic in the future, you consider these issues when making your voting decision.
And I'll just add a little bit to go along with that. That there is a definition of lobbyist in the statutes, and it involves such things as trying to influence policymakers. There are things that qualify who is a lobbyable official, for instance. And then also there are certain thresholds regarding paying or payment that is received for trying to influence policy positions. And I also want to note that departmental legislative liaisons, they have to register as lobbyists too. So to Adam's point, the definition for being a lobbyist covers many more people than what you might anticipate. And here's another question regarding, can one person actually make a difference?
Oh, absolutely. It's happened on numerous occasions. I'm trying to pull out a few examples of that, but I have seen numerous times in a committee testimony where one person's very impassioned testimony or one person's very straightforward, matter of fact, this is how it is. I've got 50 years of doing this, and this is what you should be doing, has absolutely made a difference. Like I said, lawmakers have to vote on a wide range of issues, and they probably only have a passion for maybe half a dozen different causes or topics. So they are going in with, quite frankly, an open mind on a lot of issues. And that committee testimony, even if they might have had an inkling of going in one way, based on the testimony of committee, they might go in a different direction, or at least they're going to ask some very challenging questions to the bill sponsor and see if some changes can be made to the legislation, at least before it moves on in the process. We've seen, like I said, we've seen people come in who are experts from around the country to testify and weigh in. We've also seen, just from a grassroots perspective, Mackinac Center is very involved in making FOIA available, making the Freedom of Information Act accountable to the governor and the legislature. This is not an issue that a lot of people are, there's not a lot of industries that are driving this. This is just a small group of good public policy people who are pushing this issue. And Senators Moss and Senator McBroom have been working on this issue their entire legislative career, back to when they started in the House of Representatives well over a decade ago. And slowly but surely, they have just been rolling this ball up this hill, talking and persuading their members. We almost got it done at the end of last year. We're still optimistic and hopeful we can advance that cause in this current legislative session. But yeah, the ability to make government more open and transparent is a perfect example of just a couple of people just caring passionately about the issue and just having continued conversations with their colleagues to persuade them.
And it looks like we're going to start to wrap up our program here because I don't see any more questions in the queue. But before we go, I want to thank Adam for joining us today. We really appreciate the information that you've shared as well as your insight. And I would also like to thank our Opportunity Michigan members for taking time out of their busy schedules to join us too. I know a number of our members weren't able to log in and join us this afternoon, but we will be posting a recording of this session on our YouTube channel, so it can be viewed at a later time. We will also provide links to the resources that were mentioned during Adam's presentation today. And if you have a question, but you maybe weren't able to submit it in time, or maybe you think of one a little bit later, please feel free to send it to opportunitymichigan@mackinac.org, and we will share it with Adam and get a response back to you. And once again, that email address is opportunitymichigan@mackinac.org. Thank you again for joining us this afternoon, and we hope that you have a great day.